I was keeping the secret, my past a secret. Last thing I would do would be talking about it on the Roy Ice show, right? The lightness I felt after that of just saying the thing I was so afraid of, it's better than any drug.
What's the worst thing you've ever done? Could you cope with the stress if it went viral? Our next guest went from being a California cul-de-sac soccer mom to a heroin addict, convicted on 32 felonies and dubbed the neighbor from hell. But her story didn't end there. Join me in welcoming Lara Love Hardin. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a seat.
Thank you.
So you have a story that I think if I were to write your story, no one would believe it. It's kind of like Mark Twain saying, I would write nonfiction, but no one would believe it.
Exactly.
You started out with, I'm sure, dreams of success, being a great mom, living in suburbia. What happened?
I mean, no one starts out dreaming of someday I hope I'm addicted to something, or I hope I go to jail, or I hope I hurt people I love. But I became addicted to prescription pain medication, opiates, like many other people. And it was in the mid-90s, before the opiate crisis was a crisis, and it was handed out like sample packs everywhere. And I think I had a certain combination of genetics and environment. And I grew up in a family that never really talked about their emotions or feelings, and I had no ability to ask for help.
What pain were you going through that led you to try to medicate it?
I was in my first marriage. I had 3 young boys. There was infidelity, and I had had this dream of having the perfect family life that I never had growing up. And I thought everybody else was normal. And when that was falling apart, I took a pain pill one day that was legally prescribed. And the way it interacted in my brain, it made me happy. You know, I think I had depression. Again, I would never admit that at the time. And it helped me pretend that everything was okay. It was about pretending. Everything is fine. I got it together. And I didn't.
And just medicating that, trying to keep it balanced, but it became imbalanced. What did you end up doing?
Well, the way addiction works is that first feeling that I got with 1, took 2, took 3. Eventually I was doing 60 pills a day.
Of what?
Vicodin. And I obviously knew it was a problem, and that was a big, long process, you know, and I would quit over and over and think I didn't have a problem because I could quit over and over without looking at, I was starting again over and over. And then, like for many people, it turned to smoking heroin. And that's really all it took for everything to unravel in 11 months.
These are very expensive habits. Like, how do you maintain financing these habits?
Well, I maintained it until all the money was gone, which is what happens. You know, when you're in that compulsion of addiction, suddenly you're doing whatever you can to keep it a secret and to feed it. And eventually when the money ran out, I started stealing money from my friends at school drop-off who'd leave their purse in the car, from my neighbors who I cared about. And in my mind, you know, I still had my moral compass, but there's all kinds of ways I justify it. It's not really them, it's the credit card company, you know, all the things that you know aren't right, but I couldn't stop. And I think that's really hard for people to understand. I love my children, I love my neighbors. And when you're in that obsessive thing where you feel like your survival depends on a drug, you do all kinds of crazy things.
Yeah, you do. So when did things come to a head and come crashing down?
It was November 4th, 2008, election day, I remember, because I did not vote, because I was in jail. You know? So there was a knock on the door. You know, I knew things were spiraling out of control, and you can kind of only, you know, our car was about to get to repossess, hadn't paid the mortgage, wasn't running my business, and and there was a knock on the door, a pounding on the door. And it was a number of sheriff's deputies coming there to arrest me.
And why did they arrest you?
They arrested me because I had written a check on one of my neighbor's checking accounts at the grocery store, and because there were drugs in the house. And, you know, it was the end of 11 months of craziness.
Wow. Were your kids at the house when you were arrested?
So I have 4 boys, and the 3 older ones were in middle school and high school, and the only son I had at home was my youngest, Caden, who was about to turn 4, and he was the only one home.
So, I mean, what was that experience like? Here you have a 4-year-old, you're getting handcuffed.
Yeah, I just set him up in the living room. He was watching Wonder Pets, which was his favorite show. I don't know if anyone knows that. And I had all those little stuffed animals around him. And, you know, when the police all came in, they took myself and my husband at the time into another room. And I was like, it's okay, it's okay. But then they found drugs upstairs and they handcuffed me. And it was that moment that he knew something, this was not normal. And I was asking the sheriff's deputies to let me call someone to come get him, and instead they called Child Protective Services.
What did that do to your heart?
I think in that moment, I still get, I mean, it's 15 years later, I get very emotional.
Yeah.
Because in all the delusions that I had, like, you know, it was always like, tomorrow I'll fix this, tomorrow I'll stop, tomorrow I'll get it all together. I can make everyone's life okay tomorrow. And there were no more tomorrows at that moment. And they put me in handcuffs, and he comes running over to me, and it was the moment when my hands are behind my back and I can't bend down to comfort him. And strangers are taking him away. And at that age, you know, that's a stranger danger age, and I was saying, it's okay, these are friends, but that just broke through all of the sort of delusions I was telling myself, that this is not only over, but I've imploded my life and his life.
Wow. So you end up going to jail. I want to talk to you about your experience in jail, but we have to take a break. And when we come back, we'll hear why Lara says that going to jail saved her life. Welcome back. So, Lara, you say jail saved your life. You got to unpack that for me.
It wasn't right away. And actually, when I was brought into the jail, I was still crying about my son.
Yeah.
And the sheriff's deputy, I kept saying, where is he? Where are you taking him? And the sheriff's deputy stopped me kind of in the entryway between the outside and going inside. And he said, you will never see your son again.
Wow.
He said, you should not be anyone's mother. And in that moment, I believed him. I believed him. And so 2 nights later, I decided that I had just failed at life. It's like, I gave it a try. I'd imploded my life. I couldn't, there was no spark in me to get through whatever was ahead of me. And I decided it would be better for my children to have a mother who was not alive than a mother who was in prison. And so I went to bed, and it was really the darkest moment of my life. And I tied a sheet around my neck and, you know, did some knots, and I was waiting for everyone to fall asleep. And by some, I think, kind of miracle or intervention or something, because when you're detoxing from opiates, you don't sleep for a month. And I fell asleep through the guard checks and through everything. And so I woke up in the morning when they're scraping these plastic chairs in for breakfast at 5 a.m. And I had the sheet still tied, and I was, you know, frantically trying to untie it because I still didn't want anyone to know I needed help, you know?
Yeah.
And luckily I was never in that dark place again. But how it saved me is it stopped me. You know, it stopped me, although there are a lot of drugs in jail. I'm not gonna lie, more than I saw out in the world ever. But it gave me the gift of having everything that made up who I was, every identity. I was not a mother, I was not a boss or an employee, I was not a wife, I was not a community member. I was, everything I had constructed out of my identity was gone. And then I had to be like, okay, who am I really?
Right.
And there's a gift, I think, in rebuilding from the ground up. And there's easier ways to do it, don't recommend it. But that was a gift, and I think it saved my life for a number of reasons. You know, there's 48 million people struggling with addiction in this country.
So you're also nicknamed Mama Love.
Yes.
And tell us how you got that. Is that because of your, you know, your motherly instincts that you took in there? How was that?
So first of all, every woman in jail gets a nickname from their colleagues in jail, right? But I was a mom, you know, I was a mom of 4, and that had been my identity. And my best friend in jail was 19 years old, 2 years older than my oldest son. So it was a combination of at 40 being elderly, right, in jail.
Yeah.
And
Wisdom. Yeah.
and also I had all this mom energy.
So you did keep that part of the identity going in.
I kept, that is, I mean, apart from all the felonies and on paper, like, I am someone who likes to help people and a nurturer. And sometimes that's hard to reconcile for people. So that was my nickname.
I love that.
What did you find this culture like? What's it like for a woman today in prison?
I mean, it's nothing like you see on TV in movies, if you see that. It's kind of, the way I described it was between an adolescent sleepover party and being jumped into a gang, depending. Like there was somewhere
Two
in
extreme
there, right?
differences.
But it just, you know, I think 80% of women in jail are mothers,
Really?
sole caregivers of 2.5 children, right? So what we had in common was that we were all mothers desperately missing our children and full of regret and shame.
Yeah. Wow. You did a TED Talk called Thieves of Hope. What was the inspiration for that?
Oh, so this was 11 years after my arrest. And I'll say for 11 years, as not to jump ahead, but I was keeping the secret, my past a secret. Last thing I would do would be talking about it on the Roy Ice show, right? But I got asked to give a TED Talk, and the person said, I'm not leaving till you say yes, and they stayed for 4 hours in my office. And so finally I did it, and it was the best thing I could have done, because I got up on a stage and I said, yes, I was once called the neighbor from hell, and now I'm going to tell you, which was what I was afraid people would Google, right? I was so afraid of people Googling me. And these are some other people I've been. And so it was such a weight lifted to just own my story and to just tell the truth.
Yep.
Yeah.
And the thing that you're so afraid people are going to find out, that somehow in my mind, people are going to go running, screaming if they know, or if I'm vulnerable. And it's actually the opposite. They come
they want to know
come
more.
closer.
Yeah.
And the weight, the lightness I felt after that of just saying the thing I was so afraid of, it's better than any drug I've ever taken.
It's almost taking your power back.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And there's power when we just share our true stories, not our look good stories. Yeah.
There's so many people out there that would resonate with what you have to say. So if you don't share it, you know, these people aren't going to be able to come to you and be like, I was there, I've done that, I've been through that, I know someone who's been through that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's so much shame, and like shame is so sticky, and you don't even realize, you know, in that talk, I asked everybody in the audience to think of the worst thing they've ever done, close their eyes, and then I had them open their eyes and I said, now tell the person next to you. And everyone went, oh,
yeah.
And that gasp is the only way I can think of, because words fail me, to describe what shame feels like.
Yeah.
All the time, 24 hours a day, that someone's going to find out something.
Yeah.
And that's a horrible way to live.
Yeah.
I want to unpack more of this, what you did with your shame, which I think is amazing. When we come back, we're going to talk about Lara's incredible transition into her current amazing life today. We're continuing our conversation with Lara Love Hardin. Now, Lara, I've got to hear, because I mean, the extreme of the story that you've told us so far, to make a transition into what you're doing now, Walk us through, how did that happen?
I answered a Craigslist ad for a part-time assistant at a literary agency. It was $20 an hour, and I was so excited. 5 hours a week. And I took that job, and then 12 years later, when I left to start my own agency, I was CEO of that job. And I worked with lots of amazing people in the world, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and the Dalai Lama, and Brian Stevenson, and Jane Goodall, all these people. And the whole time, like I said before, I was keeping a secret.
Right.
I thought I had to prove to the world that I was more good than bad.
Yeah.
And I had to prove it to myself. Yeah. And so I was doing all of this good work in the world, and in books, and collaborative writing, and writing as people, other people. So it was a long journey to that TED stage where I said, okay, here's the thing.
Now, I've got a photo I want to share with our audience of you having lunch with some important people. You might recognize someone that's sitting right next to Lara in yellow with some really neat glasses on. Oprah.
Oprah.
How in the world did that come about?
So this was in 2018, a book I co-wrote with a man sitting across from me. Anthony Ray Hinton was an innocent man on death row in Alabama for 30 years. And Oprah picked that book that I was the co-author on. So I was part of that, but again, I'm still keeping a secret. And at that lunch, everyone is talking and it's just been announced. And she kept giving me little lessons about what power is. And I had thought power meant, for me, for so much was, hiding. Right. And doing good from the acknowledgement sections of books. And she was like, power is putting your name on something, and power is putting a light on other people so they can find their power. And I heard that. And then, this year she popped into a surprise Zoom and told me she had picked my book for her book club, which was amazing.
The Many Lives of Mama Love. You have got to read this book. It's your memoir.
It's my memoir.
Also want to put up the picture of you working with the Dalai Lama, Bishop Tutu. Tell me about this picture. What does this picture mean to
you? There's a book called The Book of Joy.
Yeah.
That was written by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu when he was still alive. And I was part of the team that went to Dharamsala, India to have the dialogues that became the content for that book. And it was the most amazing experience to be in the same room with these two spiritual leaders. And they had so much joy and lightness about them. And I wanted that joy and lightness.
Yeah.
Every book I worked on, I learned something from that helped me. Yeah. That's the power of books.
So were you ever able to get your son back?
I was. I had a ticking clock. I had a year because of his age to meet all the requirements to get him back. And, sometimes women are sentenced to 18 months and they have a year. And then that's how our foster care system gets so overrun. But I was able, that was really what drove me, was the fight to get him back.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't imagine someone telling me I was not his mother. Yeah. And, I just in September moved him into college at UC San Diego. He started as a freshman. And that was the first moment I was so proud of both of us, because it could have gone so differently, and it does.
Yeah, such a powerful story of taking shame and turning it into finding your purpose, living your purpose. It's been just a joy to spend this conversation with you. I wish we had like 3 more hours to go through this conversation, but we've got to take a break. Don't go away, because when we come back, I'd like to share something that may help you overcome any shame that you may be carrying around. If you're lugging around some hefty baggage from mistakes that you've made in the past, welcome to the club of awkward memories and cringeworthy moments. Set your bags down for a moment and listen to this. Your breaking point can also be your making point. Everybody loves a great comeback story. Yours could be the next one. When we experience shame, a part of your brain called the insula becomes activated, As the insula processes feelings of shame, the brain releases stress hormones such as cortisol. Elevated cortisol levels can lead to feelings of anxiety, distress, and a sense of being overwhelmed, and it leads to weight gain. With the release of stress hormones and the activation of brain regions associated with shame, negative emotions can become amplified. You may feel a sense of worthlessness, self-doubt, and a desire to hide or withdraw from social interactions. You may become more cautious or hesitant to take risks, fearing further mistakes and the accompanying feelings of shame. This can hinder your ability to learn and grow from your experiences. Research shows that laughing at ourselves actually rewires our brains for resilience. It's like giving your brain a spa day. So let it go. Embrace your inner goofball and watch those neural pathways take a mud bath. Keep your chin up and keep the laughter flowing, especially when life throws you a curveball. And remember, just in case no one has told you yet today, I love you, and I know your tomorrow can be even better than today. So keep growing. Don't forget that you can find exclusive content on all of our guests. Check us out on social media using the handle Lifestyle with Roy.